Hey everyone, and welcome back to another live stream. If you have been following me on Facebook, you know this week we will be discussing ADOS movement, reparations, and race relations. If you were here last week, I want to welcome you back. And if you're here for the first time, I want to say welcome to my channel. Please subscribe, hit the like button, the notification bell so that you can get all updates of when we'll be going live and posting videos. So the ADOS movement, if you've been paying attention, watching the news, on any social media platforms, you know that the ADOS movement is the American descendants of slaves. And there has been a justice claim that will be coming forth to the United States government demanding reparations for slavery and other racialized practices such as redlining, Jim Crow, 100 years of lynching, so on and so forth. The founders of the ADOS are Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. Their website is ADOS 101 if you want to go and check out what they are requesting from the government, when they will be having the ADOS conference. I believe it'll be sometime in October this year. And just a few brief things that the ADOS is soliciting from the government. For one, a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure plan that will be targeted at ADOS communities. And this will include business loans, healthcare, education, land, and actual payouts in the form of money. The ADOS believes that these methods will help close the racial gap and begin to atone for slavery. You know, as many of us know, slavery lasted here in America over 200 years. And many people believe that slavery in another form is still happening. That is why a lot of people are saying reparations are definitely due, besides the fact that our ancestors did experience slavery here. They believe many of the racialized practices tied to slavery are still happening today, with the mass incarceration, the crime bill, and so on and so forth. On social media, in areas such as Facebook and Twitter, I've been talking to people about the ADOS movement, and a lot of people agree with it. A lot of people think that, you know, it's time for America to atone for slavery. It's time for America to atone for discriminatory practices and many things that have happened to American descendants of slaves. And the reason why we continue to stress American descendants of slaves is because there are many minority groups in America that include Black people from other countries. However, Black people from other countries, such as Jamaica, Haiti, so on and so forth, they haven't, their ancestors didn't experience slavery here in America. And I think that's one of the key distinctions when it comes to ADOS, is pointing out American descendants of slaves. And although some people don't agree with that, I think that it is very important to make that distinction. It's not to be divisive, you know, it's not to say that other minorities don't have issues here in America, but for this specifically, you know, we're focusing on the American descendants of slaves, which has triggered, you know, a lot of conversation as far as why the divisiveness. I personally don't feel that it's divisive. I feel that it is very important that American descendants of slaves really seek, excuse me, reparations from the government to close the racial wealth gap and to atone for the many atrocities that have happened to our ancestors here in America. You know, it was a very distinct form of slavery that basically stripped our ancestors of all forms of humanity. And I feel that there definitely needs to be atonement for that. Another key thing that I wanted to hit on is a question that I received from someone that watched last week's live stream. And they were asking me, how do you think that you know, people will actually come together to support reparations. And what I have to say to that is that I don't believe that everyone needs to jump on board. I don't think that everyone needs to be in agreement. I feel as long as enough of us agree, then we can get the ball rolling and we can continue to get traction and get the government to pay attention and take this seriously, because it is something that, whether people like it or not, it's not going away. And it's going to be one of the main focal points of the 2020 election. Many people that are running for president, they've already been asked, what is your agenda for the Black community? And a lot of them are trying to shy away from that question. They don't really want to answer it. And the fact of the matter is that this election cycle, Black people, specifically ADOS, have come together, and they're saying, if there is no agenda that includes the Black community, then there will be no Black vote. And I'm in agreement with that, because for decades now, Black society largely has been ignored when it comes to the presidential campaigns. There hasn't been anyone running for president that has said, hey, this is what my agenda will be to help improve some of the conditions in Black society. As many of us know, Black society, many Black communities, they face extreme poverty, poor education, poor healthcare, and these are all things that can be solved with help from the government. Um, you know, when people solicit the government for help, it's not a handout. We pay into the system, we pay taxes, and we're supposed to be a part of American society. So there's no reason why our needs should be ignored and denied. We are just as much a part of the system as everyone else. And for a long time, in my opinion, we've basically been facing paying taxes with little to no representation for our communities. ADOS says, where are some of the things ADOS is asking for? I kind of addressed that briefly. ADOS, they are soliciting the government for more business loans from the SDA. Currently, I think only about 1.7% of the capital that is designated for business loans, only 1.7% of that is actually given to ADOS communities. They also want better health care, they want better education, and they actually want land. They want land because that is something that was actually promised to our ancestors when slavery ended. They were promised that they would receive land. And as we all know, that hasn't happened in large numbers. So those are some of the things that they are requesting, and also payouts. They would like to receive financial compensation as well for what has happened to their ancestors. And like I said, I'm in total agreement with that. I feel like in order for us to actually even consider moving forward in a serious way in this country, then atonement for slavery is, is what needs to happen. We can't say that we're trying to move forward as a country and everybody is denying the very people who are the descendants of the individuals that have faced the most heinous things in this country. They're being denied. They're being denied access to many things. And in order for us to move forward and have some form of serious race relations in this country, I feel as if that would be the first step to doing that. Because I don't think that there will be any true peace until that happens. We can talk about it. We can say we're united, we're all one country, we're all Americans, we're all one people. But honestly, this continual denial of this conversation and reparative measures to atone for not just slavery, but we're talking about things that happened just as recently as 50 years ago, when many of our parents and grandparents were alive. Because that's another thing. Okay, I see comments popping up on the side of the screen. I'm gonna read. For a Movement says, do you really think your oppressors will all of a sudden decide to just stop oppression? um, that's a really good question, and that's one of the things that many people have asked. They're saying, why would the people who oppress your ancestors and many who still oppress you today, why would they just suddenly give you reparations and have a change of heart? Um, you know, we're yet to see what's going to happen. We're making the steps in the right direction, in my opinion, to say, hey, we've kind of been complacent, we've kind of been waiting, and we're not going to wait anymore. There has to be a line drawn in the sand. We have to say, what are we going to get from this process as being so-called citizens of this country? And personally, I feel like if there is nothing done to atone for the crimes, these are crimes that have been committed against our ancestors. And like I said, just as recently as our parents and grandparents, the lynchings, the denial of access, all of that, there needs to be atonement for that. And if the government is not willing to do right, then we will have to consider serious measures to just drop out of the democratic process altogether and begin to explore where we'll be headed as Black America. Um, you know, we can no longer sit by complacent and just take what is being given to us. It's time. This August will mark the 400-year mark of when the first slave ships came to America. And I think now is the perfect time to do something about this horrific blemish on humanity. I feel as if the government wants to have peace in this country, and if individuals want to be able to move forward and actually see real change, then this is something that must be done, or the problems that we see will continue. Fort Lewis says, what is the line in the sand? The line in the sand, like I said, is going to be Black people taking into serious consideration that if there is no atonement for the things that have taken place and some of the things that are still happening today, we are going to have to seriously consider dropping out of the system. We're going to have to come together and build institutions for ourselves that will be designated to our needs. And, I don't have all the answers to what that will involve right now, but I know we can't continue these conditions. Our foreparents were robbed of the legacy of passing down generational wealth to us. There were times when our ancestors were not even allowed to have access to bank loans or to buy land or to do any of the things to create generational wealth to pass down from generation to generation. Many of the people that you see today, they were given a leg up because their ancestors were able to have access to capital, access to land, access to do things just as basic as owning a home to pass down. Those things increase in value over time. And many of our ancestors were denied the right to that. And that's why you see some of the conditions that you see in the Black community today. There is such a big divide in the wealth gap between white communities and Black communities. That is not by accident. That was something that was done by design, and the government facilitated that. And that leads me to another point when people say, well, I never owned a slave. I never mistreated anyone. Why should I be responsible? But what you don't understand is that you're a part of this government by being a citizen of this country. And if Congress decides that reparations are to be paid, as you being a part of this government and you've been able to enjoy the fruits of unpaid labor that built this country, you will have to, participate in atoning for that. If you want to be able to enjoy the benefits of being in this country, there's just no way around that. You can't say, well, I never did this and I never did that, but you're sitting in the very country that, received its seed funding from the flesh and blood and work of human beings, and they were never compensated for that. They were never even, given the opportunity to build anything for their families. So for someone to take a very, you know, just a very nonchalant attitude towards that, that is one of the main reasons that we're in the conditions that we're in today. And like I said, if we don't come up really quick with a solution for how we are going to address these issues, I fear that we are going to see things get much worse. The time is now that, Black people, ADOS in particular, they are tired of the status quo. The way things are going cannot continue. We have to come up with solutions to figure out how we are going to make the necessary changes for everyone to be able to have the same experience in this country. No matter how much people want to deny it, we don't all have the same experiences in this country. And if we don't do anything about it, the problem will get worse. It won't get better. Which brings me to my point about race relations. A lot of people think that things have gotten better, and to a certain degree, they have. You don't see as much brutality as you saw during segregation and Jim Crow. However, there is still a big divide between, in particular, between whites and Blacks in this country. And a lot of that comes from the fact that we haven't had the conversation. And when I say the conversation, I mean a serious conversation about what has been done and what will be done to repair the sins of the past, and in some cases, the present. I think that by continuing to deny this, we are only intensifying the problem. And if we're going to have serious recourse, we are going to have to take the necessary steps to make sure that we are addressing these issues. I don't know if anyone's been paying attention to the news this week, but Bernie Sanders, who has been thought to be a longtime friend of the Black community, a lot of times you see him trotting around with Killer Mike, the rapper, and he's been referred to as an ally of the Black community. However, when Bernie Sanders was asked about what he would do as far as reparation goes, very agitated. He said that he felt reparations were divisive, and this was the first time he was running for president back in 2015. And now that he's running for president again, the same question has come up, and he stands by his point that he does not support reparations. I think that we need to be very careful about who we refer to as an ally, because personally, if he was an ally of the community, I feel that he would have no problems with reparations. Bernie Sanders is of the Jewish faith, and Jewish people have suffered atrocities as well. And Bernie Sanders had no issue with reparations for Jewish people. So the very fact that he would have a problem with reparations for ADOS, I see that as very problematic. Um, you know, if he feels that he has any chance of actually becoming president, I think that he needs to come up with serious measures and serious things that he will be doing for the Black community. Pretending to be a friend of the Black community is no longer going to be acceptable, because that has been a long-standing issue with people running for president. They feel as if they just come around Black communities with lip service, but no actual tangibles, nothing that can materialize into anything that will actually help the communities. They feel as they come around dancing, singing, and you know, laughing and joking, that will be enough for the Black community. And that may have been the case in the past, but this time around, that will not do, that will not suffice. Black people, ADOS in particular, they want something tangible. They want something that will create a situation for their communities that they will no longer be at the bottom of the barrel. Ford movement stated every country needs a bottom class. To a certain degree, I believe I understand what you're trying to say, especially in capitalistic societies. Um, in many instances, there needs to be a bottom class in order for the status quo to remain and for the system to operate in the way that it's set forth to operate. However, in my humble opinion, I feel like if America wants to continue to stand as a nation, then these things will need to be addressed. A people will only be oppressed and mistreated for so long until they say enough is enough. And I believe that with the ADOS movement coming to the forefront, also the other campaign, Tangibles 2020, which is Tariq Nasheed's campaign, when you see all of these things coming to pass where people are saying no more, we're not going to continue to be oppressed, we're not going to continue to be ignored, and if so, we'll just drop out of the process altogether. And believe me, there is no government that wants an entire group of people to drop out of the system, to drop out of the program. Because when people feel that they feel oppressed and they drop out of the system, those are the first signs of rebellion. And those are the first signs of revolution. And I think that that is not something that any of us would like to see. I feel like many like for there to be reconciliation, for the descendants of slaves to actually get what their ancestors never were able to receive, which is fairness, which is the opportunity to truly reach their full potential, reach their full destiny. And if that right continues to be denied, then we will see that rebellion begin to transpire. Because as I stated, no one wants to be oppressed. Everyone wants to feel free. And for so long, Black people in this country, ADOS in particular, have been denied that right. I think that's an undisputed fact. Everyone knows that slavery was wrong. Everyone knows that lynching was wrong. Everyone knows that Jim Crow was wrong. Everyone knows mass incarceration is wrong. Everyone knows that these things are wrong, and people say it's wrong, it's bad, it needs to stop. But what real changes have we made in that direction? What are we actually doing besides saying it's wrong? When are we actually going to come together and right the wrongs of the past and present. I don't feel that we can continue to just talk about it. She made, and they have to be made soon, because as we can see, Black people are no longer falling for the games and the tricks of the past, when we would just get out there and we would vote and we had no real agenda behind us. But now that we're all coming to have an agenda and we're saying this is what we want for our vote is no longer free. Our vote comes with conditions. Our vote is going to be bargained. We are going to want something in return for our vote. And I feel that's only right. I don't know. I can't think of any that just goes out there and blindly votes, or just votes for someone because they like them or they have a good speech. You know, many communities, when they vote, they're voting for the interests of their community. For a long time, many of us, myself included, we kind of didn't really pay attention to the policies, and we didn't ask for much when it came to our vote. We just gave our vote to the person that we trusted would possibly do right by us. And that hasn't worked out. It hasn't worked out for many decades now. And, we haven't seen any real legislation to kind of advance Black society since the civil rights movement, if we're going to be honest. And even that's debatable. So, hey, Lily, how you doing? So, as I was stating, atonement is absolutely necessary. In my opinion, there won't be any real change in this country until that happens. We can continue to talk about it. We can continue to say that, things are getting better. But if we look around, we can see that that's not the case in many situations. When you think about the Black community as a whole, I'm not speaking about individual Black people, because that's another thing that I want to address. Some people may look around and say, well, this person is doing good and that person is doing good, so why can't you? You're thinking from a very individualistic standpoint. Black society as a whole is not doing very well. You can't cherry pick a few individuals and say that they're doing good, so that means the whole of Black society is doing good. And the only way for the playing field to even be level for Black families to begin to catch up is with the racial wealth gap being closed, and reparations will do that. Reparations will right that wrong. No matter how much people want to deny that, that is something that reparations can achieve relatively quickly. Be better as a whole, Black people, rather than fighting divided. Okay, as far as that goes with that question, are we better as a whole, Black people, rather than fighting divided? I agree to that to a certain extent. Stating earlier, this particular election cycle, ADOS, American Descendants of Slaves, they have a legitimate gripe with the American government because our ancestors faced slavery here in America. If you are a descendant of someone who was enslaved in the Caribbean, or if you're someone who is a descendant of someone who, went through colonialism, imperialism in Africa, that you can't support ADOS. Why would you not support ADOS? I don't see that as something that is being is dividing us. I mean, why would you not get behind the movement? Why would you not be an ally of the movement? I feel like as American descendants of slaves, we have to deal with what's going on right here in America. By lifting ourselves up, we'll be in a position to help in diaspora. So I don't see it as divided. I see it as other individuals can support us. They can support the movement. And, ultimately, once we're strong, then other communities in the diaspora, other, our brothers and sisters abroad, will be able to help them. But if we're weak and we're not in a position to even help ourselves in many cases, then what good are we to, other descendants of slaves in the Caribbean and Africa and so on and so forth? How are we going to be in a position to help them if we're weak and defenseless? Okay. Lily says she thinks the connection is lost. She can't hear me. So if you can hear me, could you please press 1 in the chat? Okay, For a Movement says that he's hearing. If anyone else is having difficulty hearing, could you please press 1 in the chat? Okay, Lily. I don't think anyone else is having trouble hearing. Maybe you should check your connection. Okay, she says it's working now. That brought some insight to what you were addressing. So yeah, I don't feel that ADOS addressing this particular situation right here and right now is us fighting divided. Once we're in a position where we're strengthened, we'll be able to help others. But as they always say, you can't help anyone if you haven't helped yourself, if you haven't put yourself in a position that you are able to be strong enough to help others. Something else that I wanted to address is the individuals that state that if Black people are to receive reparations, that it will end up back in the hands of the very people who are oppressing them. And what I want to say to that is we don't know that to be the truth. We're often so hard on each other when it comes to certain things. And I think right now, while we're actually trying to do something positive, I think the negativity needs to be set aside. These are very serious times that we're living in, and I feel like we need to get serious about what is going on. The naysayers, there will always be naysayers, but if you are one of those people, I think that, it's the time for you to get on board with something that is long overdue, and just being negative about it is really not going to help the situation. What is it going to hurt for you to be a part of something that could change the course of history? I don't think that is going to hurt at all. And I feel like now is not the time for us to be having petty arguments about what someone is going to do with the money, and how for that reason it makes no sense for Black people to even receive reparations at all, because they don't have good money management skills. They won't know what to do with the money, and it'll just be a waste of time. I don't agree that those types of sentiments are necessary. And if you are one of those people, I think that you should reevaluate what it is that you gain by doing that. Lily says, what are your thoughts or suggestions about strengthening us so we can work collectively? Okay. The first thing that I'll say is that we need to address the issue of being negative toward each other. As I was just saying, there's people that are already putting down the movement before it's even, you know, gotten any real substantial traction. And that is the problem. We spend a lot of time going at each other and not spending that time coming up with solutions. So the first thing we need to do is we need to weed out the negativity. We need to get on board with each other. We need to get on code and we need to get serious about what it is that we want. Um, you know, there's a lot of things that we can say won't be possible, but I think that we don't know what is possible until we actually have tried it. I think that these types of conversations that we're having now are extremely necessary. And I feel like we can use these opportunities to actually bounce ideas, back and forth off each other. Anybody who has something constructive to add to the conversation, I feel like we all need to put our heads together and strategize so that we can come up with really effective solutions to bring forth real change. So that is some of that's the key thing I feel that we can do. I feel that we also need to get into the mindset that we deserve the things that we are asking for, and we are going to stay the course, because a lot of times movements get started and they're trends. I don't want this to be a trend. There's a lot of hashtagging going on and people are getting on board with this because it's new and it's something that's being talked about consistently on social media and so forth. So I don't want this to be something that's a trend. I want us to be very serious about this. As I was saying, I want us to stay the course. I want us to, be in concert with each other to the point that we're going to say that this is what we want, and we are willing to stick together until we get it. So those are some of the things that I feel that we can do, as a starting point to be able to uplift each other and work together collectively to bring forth the change for things that we really need. Forward Movement says ADOS is confusing now because in one breath you're saying Black people as a whole, but in the other breath you're saying American descendant of slaves. That breaks up the voting power, whatever that means. As I was saying before, when it comes to ADOS, even if you're not an ADOS, you can still support the movement. Why wouldn't you? This is righting a wrong that has been done to American descendants of slaves. So why wouldn't you want to get behind that as a Black person when you have had ancestors that have gone through slavery as well? As an American citizen, if I wasn't in ADOS, I would still support the movement. I would still stand behind, my brother and sister from America to say, I'm in support of this. This was an atrocity that was done to your ancestors, and I wholeheartedly support, the efforts that are being made for you to get what is rightfully owed to you, to atone for the atrocities that were committed against your ancestors. So I don't see it as something that, just because you're not an American descendant of slavery, that you can't support this. And my question to those people would be, why don't you support it? So if Forward Movements could add some insight on why an individual who is not an ADOS, but is a descendant of slavery, why would you not support the movement regardless? So yeah, you know, that that's one thing that kind of bothers me with you know, individuals who are not particularly American descendants of slaves. they um, they sometimes see this as, why should I be involved with this, or why should I care? Um, and like I was saying, just because you're not an ADOS does not mean that you can't support this. I feel like once we're strong as a people here in America, then that will spread out to the rest of the African diaspora. Um, I am not for the division of Black people based on ethnicity. So I am a very strong supporter of us coming together collectively. And I feel like there is no reason why you can't support this just because you're not, in particular, an ADOS. Like I said, I would pose the question, what does it matter? Why would you not want to support it? Lily says, I agree with that and supporting one another. Exactly. Exactly, Lily. We have to support one another, regardless of what our ethnic backgrounds are. At the end of the day, we're still all Black people here in America. And like I continue to say, and I will continue to stress, once we are strong and we have attained the power to be able to help, that is exactly what we will do. I'm not an individual who supports ADOS that is saying, okay, once these reparations come and we're strengthened economically, then forget everyone else. I'm not one of those people. And I would strongly suggest to other ADOS that you don't begin to feel like you want to elevate yourself above another Black person who is not particularly an ADOS. I feel like that is counterproductive. I don't see how that is going to get us anywhere in the because America is just one place in the world, and people of European descent, they're united with one another no matter where they're from. America, it doesn't matter, Australia, the UK, no, you name it. At the end of the day, they have a united front when it comes to things that matter. And I feel that Black people need to kind of adopt that mindset. We need to understand that we need to stick together. And that is not going to happen if we're pointing out the negative things about the ADOS. In particular, people who continue to say that it's dividing us. I don't feel that ADOS is dividing us at all. I feel like if you're here in America right now and you're not particularly an ADOS, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be backing this movement. Like I said, I don't understand that. Hi, Kizzy. Kizzy says that's right. Yeah, that is right. Uh, if you want to divide yourself from someone who is identifying as an ADOS just based off the fact that you feel like you're not included, I feel like that's counterproductive. Um, you should be supporting this movement. And that's just my opinion about it. Another thing that I wanted to address is the individuals that are running for president. I believe right now, Democratic side, we have Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker. If I'm not mistaken, I can't remember her first name right now. Elizabeth Warren, I believe it is. And then there's another candidate that actually came out and proposed 100 billion for reparations. In my opinion, I don't feel like that begins to scratch the surface, but she actually was the one that proposed that. What I would like to address when it comes to the individuals that are running for president, and are, kind of backing away from the reparations conversation, my advice to you would be to not take this lightly. The ADOS movement is a serious movement. It's not just people having conversations online. This is something that is long overdue. And, Black people, ADOS in particular, they are, they want something in return for their vote. They're no longer going to just sit aside on the sidelines where everyone else reaps the benefits. And I also feel that a very important distinction that needs to be made is minorities. That phrase within itself does not particularly mean Black people. So that's another trick that is being used, the minority community. But when you look at it, in actuality, the only people in this country that are not considered as minorities are white men. So minorities is not addressing Black people in particular. When you are speaking to the ADOS community, you need to address the needs of Black people, of the Black community, American descendants of slaves in particular. Okay. Forward Movement says, because it's been a 400-year struggle, it seems as if ADOS is trying to jump out front. I hear ADOS asking for support, but saying we can't help others yet. Normally, people support people they ask for support from. Okay. What I want to say to that is that there has been many different things that ADOS have done to help other ethnic groups, Black ethnic groups in particular, that have come to America. And, I think that there's nothing wrong with ADOS asking for the atrocity of slavery to be atoned. As I was saying before, I don't see how anyone could not support that. And I don't see how anyone could feel like they're being excluded just because, they're not particularly in ADOS. So, I would have to ask, why is it that people that are not ADOS, why do they feel excluded from this? If I can get an answer to that question, I believe I would be able to expound on that a little bit more. But I haven't received an answer to that. I don't understand why people feel like they're being excluded, or they're being, ADOS are not willing to help anyone else because this particular issue is specifically for ADOS. Well, I'm going to give Forward Movement some time to answer that question if he would like to. And anyone else who has any questions as far as ADOS, reparations, anything that they would like to add to the conversation, you can do that at this time. Another thing that I wanted to address is the founders of ADOS. And this is not, an attack on anyone's character, but I do have a question for Yvette Carnell in particular, because I was listening to one of her live streams, and she was stating that she wanted to be able to access whiteness. And that statement confused me. I don't know exactly what she meant by that, but that was problematic to me. I think that what she was trying to say is that she wanted to access what it felt like to be normal in America. And what I would say to her on that is that, that particular rhetoric is very problematic. I feel like if we're supposed to all be Americans, that there's no need for anyone to feel like unless they're accessing whiteness, then they're not normal in America. Everyone who is in America needs to feel as if they are experiencing a sense of normalcy, a sense of fairness. And if not, then I think that we need to reevaluate the entire way that we look at this country. Um, we can say that we're moving forward and we're turning over a new leaf as far as race relations go. But until everyone feels included, until everyone feels free, until no one feels oppressed, then I don't think that we can actually say that we have made real progress that will move us forward. And we won't have to continue to address these situations that we continue to address year after year, decade after decade, and century after century, if we're going to be honest. What I would like to say in closing to everyone is, just think about what will happen if there is reconciliation for the things that have been done wrong in the past. I personally feel like, it will move us forward as a nation. We will be able to, have real positive changes as far as race relations go. And, I feel as if we'll be able to change the tide and turn the course of history, once the status quo is gone and we're actually doing things that really matter, things that are really moving us forward as a nation. I think that then is the time where we can celebrate and we can say that we've actually accomplished something and that we've done all that we could to make sure that every individual in this country has access to the freedoms and the liberties that everyone else does. And if we're not going to get serious about that, I feel that we're just going to have to deal with the consequences. The opportunity has presented itself once again in a major way for there to be real change coming to our society. And I feel like if we do this, we can be a beacon to the rest of the world to say, many horrible things have happened in this country, but now we're taking positive, steps in the right direction to change the course of all of the things that have happened. And I feel that if we do that, we can inspire other people across the world to follow in our footsteps. Why can't we be the first to do this? I honestly feel as if, the change can begin with us. We can, do what is necessary for us to atone for the sins of the past, and even some of the things that are happening present day. So like I said, the opportunity is here, the opportunity is now. We can make these changes and we can all get on the right side of history. It's up to us at this point. What will happen? What will we do with this opportunity? Everyone on the sound of my voice right now and who will be watching the playback to this video, you need to ask yourself that question. What are we going to do to be on the right side of history? Or will we just, watch this entire structure deteriorate? Some people may say, that may be a good thing. But I feel like if that's something that we can prevent, then it'll be in our best interest to do it. Okay, I see another question just came in from Forward Movements. It says, it's not about feeling left out. Who really minds being left out of the struggle? It's about figuring out why ADOS is trying to separate themselves. Okay, I thought I was pretty clear when I stated that I don't feel that the whole idea behind ADOS is to separate themselves exclusively from other groups. I feel like this particular situation is an ADOS issue because other people that may have come to this country as immigrants, other Black people, they are not American descendants of slaves. So therefore, they wouldn't have a justice claim to the United States government to receive any kind of, reparations for slavery or any wrongdoings that were done to their ancestors because it didn't take place here in America. I've spoken out against anyone that, attaches themselves to the ADOS movement that is looking to separate themselves. Like I stated, I feel that's counterproductive. And I feel like in the grander scheme of things, that won't help Black people on an international level. I feel like we need to all be coming together internationally. But just because there is a particular issue that affects American descendants of slaves, I don't feel that that should be looked at as divisive. For example, right now, the economic freedom fighters in Africa, they're fighting for, economic empowerment for Africans on the continent. That doesn't mean that they're not Pan-Africanists. That doesn't mean that they, don't want anything to do with anyone outside of Africa. That I don't think that that means that they are not, they don't want to reach out to Black people in America, the Caribbean, or elsewhere. So I feel like that is where the confusion is coming in, that people feel as if because this particular situation is not pertaining to them, that ADOS is separating themselves. And like I said, I'm confused by that. I don't see how you wouldn't consider yourself an ally, even if the situation is not particularly addressing the situation that happened with your ancestors. I feel like that is something that we could have a conversation about, and you know maybe come together and talk about something that could possibly be taken to the United Nations as a united group of Africans of descendants of slavery. But I still don't think that that delegitimizes the ADOS movement. So I hope that that brings some clarity to your question. I see another comment here from Forward Movement. It says, until no one feels oppressed, how about other descendants of slaves? Okay. I don't feel that ADOS does not support helping out other individuals. But I feel like if we are a scattered group of people and we have not come together to actually get something going that would even make us a group of people that could even be taken seriously, I don't really see why anybody would feel as if we're in a position to, be on some type of Pan-African movement, any legitimate movement. There's movements here and there spread out, but I don't think that there is any strong movement as of right now where ADOS can say, okay, this is what we're going to bring to the table. This is what we have to offer, that would actually be legitimate and substantial. So, if there's anyone that has something to bring to the conversation and something that they feel, that they can suggest to the ADOS movement, I don't see why you feel like you wouldn't be able to do that. Um, I feel as if there's any separation, then it's because you want to be separated. Um, I don't feel that the average person that is attaching themselves to the ADOS movement is, saying that they don't want anything to do with someone who's not particularly descendant of an ADOS. So, I hope that I'm providing as much clarity as I possibly can, and I feel like this conversation needs to be continued. So, I believe that this is going to be a part two, and anyone who has anything that they would like to add to this conversation, anyone who is not an ADOS that has anything that they want to bring forth, anything they would like to say, you're more than welcome to do that. Just leave a comment, and your comments will be addressed in part two. But for now, I am going to end it here, and I would like to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. Like I said, if this is your first time here, I want to welcome you to my channel, and I look forward to having more conversations on things that are involving the Black community and things that are facing our society today. So thank you to everyone for watching. You can follow me on Twitter at Shelly Speaks One. My Facebook is Shelly Speaks. And like I said, now is the time for us to move forward and begin to take serious steps in the right direction. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.